There may be no job in America where the standards are as contradictory as motherhood. Be devoted, but have an identity. Work, but never miss anything. Stay home, but don't waste your potential. Make childhood magical, but don't try to look like you're trying too hard. And when a mother appears to fail those standards in public, we don't look away. We pull up a chair to watch. An active murder trial in Massachusetts, a #1 best-selling novel that just got picked up as an Anne Hathaway movie, and a social media movement selling millions of women a fantasy of traditional motherhood that never actually existed. Here's the uncomfortable truth that no one wants to admit out loud. I think America is deeply obsessed with watching mothers fail. Today I'm going to do a deep dive on this fascinating topic and talk about everything from the Lindsay Clancy trial to the popular new novel Yesteryear and the Tradwife culture, and the surprising ways in which these things connect. I'm going to share some shocking statistics and research that shows how big this problem is, and discuss what experts say you can actually do about it. This is one of the most interesting videos I've made. Please like and share it with others so we can advocate for this topic. What exactly do we expect a good mother to be? And what happens when no actual human being can consistently be her? I think our culture sets up an impossible and completely rigged standard of motherhood. We demand that women be perfect caregivers and successful career professionals, domestic artisans, and emotionally unbreakable human beings. We expect all of this while offering them very little help, expensive childcare, limited medical support, terrible postpartum mental health care, and endless societal pressure. And then when a mother finally breaks down under that weight, whether it's a real-life tragedy like in the Lindsay Clancy case, or a smash hit fictional story like in the novel Yesteryear, what does society actually do? We do not pause to actually fix the broken system. We grab the popcorn. We scroll through the news and the social media comment sections. We pull apart their lives, dissect their marriages, and judge their darkest moments, almost like it's a competitive sport. I'm Neal K. Shah, a Johns Hopkins and NIH-funded caregiving researcher and the CEO of Yesteryear. I've helped thousands of families navigate aging, dementia, and serious illness. I'm not a clinician, but a leading researcher and innovator in caregiving, and I spent hours researching and thinking about this topic so I could share with you what I found. What I've learned over the years is that the hardest part of caregiving is often the invisibility of it. It's doing the enormous, exhausting, unpaid, around-the-clock work that nobody sees, and then being judged by the people who have no idea what you're carrying. Well, mothers are the original caregivers, and they're living inside this exact same trap: maximum expectations, minimum visibility. Today, we're going to break down why our culture is so fascinated by the fall of the ideal mother. And by the end of this video, you'll understand 3 main things. First, how social media created a fake traditional wife ideal that is making real mothers sick. Second, the dangerous difference between normal exhaustion and medical emergencies like postpartum psychosis, and why our healthcare system completely keeps missing the warning signs. And third, the dark psychological reasons why watching a mother fall apart gives so many people a strange sense of relief. And along the way, I'm going to show you the actual numbers, what childcare really costs, how many hours of invisible work we're talking about here, and what the research says about what the pressure does to the human brain. Because I think once you see the data, you can't unsee it. Most importantly, if you're a parent feeling overwhelmed right now, I also want to share practical ways to break free from this rigged game before it breaks you. And one more thing before we start here, and I want to be very clear about it. I'm going to talk about an active criminal trial in this video, and I'm not going to diagnose anyone, not going to convict or acquit anyone. That's what a courtroom and a jury is for. What I am going to examine is the way that we, the audience, behave when a story like that appears on our screens. First, to understand why this is happening right now, we have to look at 2 massive cultural events that have recently taken over the public conversation. One is a tragic real-world news story, and the other is a best-selling novel. The first is the case of Lindsay Clancy. In January 2023, Lindsay, who was a labor and delivery nurse and a mother of 3 from Duxbury, Massachusetts, suffered a catastrophic mental health crisis. Her 3 young children, Cora, Dawson, and Callan, died. She has pled not guilty to 3 counts of murder, and her defense is pursuing an insanity defense, arguing that she was not criminally responsible. As of the day that I'm recording this, that trial is still underway. There's no verdict. The defense argues severe psychiatric illness, including postpartum psychosis and the effects of being heavily medicated, meant that she lacked criminal responsibility. Prosecutors argue she acted deliberately, and clinicians who treated her before the deaths have testified they did not observe psychosis when they saw her. Now, when a national tragedy like that occurs, you would hope that the public response would be to think about the facts, the grief that the family must be suffering through, and ask how our healthcare system failed to protect a woman that was clearly in distress. But that is not what happened on the internet. Instead, the internet has turned this tragedy into a morbid public spectacle. People spent months picking apart her social media accounts. They analyzed old family photos, spread rumors about her husband's private life, zoomed in on images of her looking tired, and endlessly debated her character. People talked about her story with an intense and almost addiction-like fascination. They were not just discussing a tragedy. They were absolutely fascinated by the total collapse of a young woman who seemed from the outside to have everything right: a great career, a beautiful home, a loving family, and the outward appearance of an ideal life. And then a novel came along earlier this year that captured the public obsession in fiction, Yesteryear by the author Claire Burke. It quickly became a #1 New York Times bestseller when it was released in April 2026, became a major book club pick, and was picked up for a major movie adaptation starring Anne Hathaway. Why did this book explode in popularity? Because I think it tapped directly into our culture's fascination with traditional motherhood and the hidden lies behind it. The book follows a fictional woman named Natalie Heller Mills. Natalie is a famous Christian Tradwife influencer with millions of followers on social media. She lives on a gorgeous farm called Yesteryear Ranch. To her audience, Natalie is the absolute queen of a perfect domestic life. She wears prayer dresses, bakes fresh sourdough bread from scratch, raises a large family, and preaches that a woman's true fulfillment comes from total submission to her home and husband. Her followers look at her life with intense envy. But behind the camera, Natalie's life is a total fabrication. She does not do all that labor by herself. She relies on a team of hidden nannies, industrial kitchen equipment, digital producers, and massive wealth from her husband's politically connected family. Privately, Natalie even secretly resents her followers, despises her unmotivated husband, and feels utterly suffocated by the very brand that she's built. Then comes a wild story twist. After a major public scandal breaks, Natalie wakes up one morning and finds herself stripped of all her modern conveniences, and she's stuck living in the harsh reality of the actual year 1855, forced to survive the brutal, painful physical labor of real pioneer life without all the modern help. And that twist is the whole point of the book. The fantasy of the simpler time only works as long as you keep the nannies, the appliances, the money, and the film crew just off the camera. So it made me think, why are millions of people just devouring a book like that? Because just like in the Lindsay Clancy case, I think society is deeply fascinated by watching the mask of maternal perfection slipped. We are drawn to stories where the woman who claims to have it all together suddenly falls apart. But I also want to note something because it's important to keep these two things separate. Yesteryear is a satire, and it's fiction designed to be enjoyable. The Clancy case involves 3 real children who are dead and a real woman on trial. Those two stories are not morally equivalent, and I'd be doing a disservice if I blurred that line. But what connects the two stories is our reactions. It's the public appetite that we bring to both. Therapist Katie Chapin wrote an excellent article about this exact pattern in Psychology Today. She pointed out that whether it's a real-world crime disaster or a fictional satire, people react with a strange kind of relish. They talk about how the mental health system failed, how the husband failed, or how the mother failed. But deeper down, why do they do this? Because modern motherhood has become a pressure cooker, and watching someone else explode releases the steam for everyone else. Hold that image of a pressure cooker, because in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how much pressure there is. How did modern motherhood get so complicated in the first place? To answer that, we have to look at this Tradwife, or traditional wife, movement on social media platforms like Instagram and TikTok. If you spend even a few minutes on these, you've probably seen the videos. A soft-spoken woman in a floral dress stands in a sunlit kitchen, soft music playing in the background. She spends 6 hours making cereal from scratch, churning her own butter, smiling calmly while young children play quietly with wooden toys nearby. The idea being sold is very simple. Modern life is too hard. Corporate careers are exhausting. If women just return to their traditional roles, stay at home, and dedicate every second to domestic care, then surely peace and happiness will follow. The appeal of this is real. Corporate work is genuinely grinding a lot of people down. Many women genuinely do find deep meaning in running a household and raising children full time. And I think that is a legitimate and honorable choice that deserves respect. The desire for slowness in life, for craft, for a life that isn't measured in email notifications and corporate meetings, that's not delusion, but a reasonable human response to a genuinely exhausting modern economy. So my critique here is not of the women who choose a domestic life. My critique is of the production and the theater. There's a difference between a real choice and a fake performance that is being sold online. It sounds like a soothing escape, especially in a world where everything costs more money and the work stress is through the roof. But it is a complete illusion. Here's what those short 2 to 3 minute social media videos do not show you. The traditional wife movement on social media is not a rejection of modern commerce at all. It is a multi-million-dollar digital business designed to sell things. In the novel Yesteryear, the author exposes this exact dynamic. The main character, Natalie, presents herself as a simple homemaker who obeys her husband. But in reality, Natalie is the main financial breadwinner for the entire family. Her husband is unemployed and spends his days mostly on online forums, while Natalie manages the brand deals, hires the staff, and secretly moves money into private bank accounts because she knows her position is fragile. The content presented to millions of viewers as effortless domestic joy is actually a staged and highly calculated production, requiring a massive amount of hidden work. And that's where the trap catches everyday mothers. When a regular mother watches these type of curated videos in her living room, she does not see the hidden nannies or the video editing crew. She just sees another woman who seems to be doing everything totally effortlessly. And we can actually measure what that does to people. Researchers studying the perfect mother norm found that feeling pressure to be a perfect mother was associated with parental burnout, and they identified the pathway. It runs through elevated stress and through an intense focus on avoiding mistakes. Think about that again. The pressure itself doesn't just make mothers tired. It makes them terrified of getting it wrong. And a brain that's running constant error detection all day long does not get to rest. Another study, this one of 270 mothers, found that women who are naturally more prone to social comparison reported more negative effects from following parenting accounts on Instagram. And a 2026 experiment with 70 full-time working mothers found that exposure to posts about idealized motherhood raised short-term anxiety and unfavorable comparison. Now, those are still relatively small numbers, and this 270 mother study also found something important that cuts the other way. Those same online parenting communities also provide genuine support for a lot of women. So social media isn't uniformly bad. Plenty of isolated mothers have found their only real village in a comments thread at 2 in the morning. But I think the conclusion here is not that social media invented maternal insecurity. Mothers were being judged long before the iPhone came along. But what I think social media did do was to industrialize these comparisons. It took a feeling that you might have had once a week at a playground and made it available to you 10 or 20 times a day, algorithmically optimized in your pocket, even at 2 o'clock in the morning while you're up at night feeding a newborn baby. So the modern mother tries to match that standard, but modern motherhood has made that standard practically impossible to reach. Look at the two main choices presented to women today. Choice one, you work a full-time career because the costs of living are sky high. In many big cities, sending young children to daycare costs more than even a monthly mortgage payment. So you work 40 or 50 hours a week, come home absolutely exhausted, and then start a second shift of cooking, cleaning, parenting. And I don't want to just assert that childcare is expensive. Let me go through the actual federal numbers, because they're way worse than many people even think. Department of Labor data shows that full-day care for just one child costs up to $17,000 a year in many areas and over $31,000 a year in some major metro areas. At the high end, it can get to 30% of median family income just spent on childcare for one kid. In many areas, childcare costs even more than the rent or a mortgage payment. And when adequate care breaks down, like when the daycare closes or the babysitter quits or parents never even get off the wait list, these households report losing an average of nearly 66 workdays. That's 3 months of your working life gone. Not because you weren't trying hard enough, but because the care infrastructure to help you doesn't actually exist. Or choice two, you decide to stay at home. But staying at home is no longer just about keeping the children fed, safe, and loved. Society now demands what experts call intensive parenting. You're expected to make organic meals from scratch, eliminate plastic and everything, curate educational activities, maintain a clean house, and post about it online while also staying off your phone so you're not accused of neglecting your kids. Do you see the problems here? If a woman works, she's told that she's neglecting her family. If she stays home, she's told she must perform domestic perfection around the clock. No matter which path a woman chooses, the game is rigged in modern society, and she's practically set up to fail. And when mothers fail to meet these manufactured standards, they usually do not blame the system, they blame themselves. They internalize it as a personal character flaw, and that constant guilt is driving millions of mothers into severe emotional burnout. Before we get to mental health, I need to show one more thing, and this is the part that I think men understand the least. Let's start with the clock. In the 2025 American Time Use Survey, among adults living with children under 6 years old, women spend about 2.8 hours a day on primary childcare, men spend about 1.7. That's an hour a day extra. Over a year, that's roughly 400 additional hours. 10 full work weeks of unpaid labor every single year that one parent is doing that the other one isn't. But that survey only counts what you're actually doing. It cannot count what you're holding in your head. Remembering the pediatrician appointment. Notice the shoes are getting too small. Know the preschool form is due on Friday. Realize the allergy medicine is almost empty. Figure out who's picking up on Tuesday when the schedule changes. Remember which cousin's birthday is coming and whether the last gift was a duplicate. Keep a running mental list of every food each child will actually eat. A 2024 study finally gave this a measurable name: cognitive household labor. The anticipating, the planning, the remembering, the delegating, the work on top of the work. Researchers studied 322 mothers of young children, and they found this cognitive labor was divided even more unequally than physical housework. And carrying more of it was associated with depression, stress, burnout, worse overall mental health, and worse relationship functioning. Now, that study's observational, and it can't prove the mental load causes those outcomes, but it establishes something that I think matters enormously. The invisible work is real enough to measure and matter. And this is why so many mothers describe a specific kind of exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix. Because you can hand off a task, it's much harder to hand off being the person who remembers everything. Zoom out, and this whole thing shows up clearly in the national data. In 2023, figures highlighted by the US Surgeon General, 48% of parents said that on most days, their stress felt completely overwhelming. Among other adults, that number was only 26%. So the stress of parents is nearly double. That is not a group of people with poor time management skills. The Surgeon General of the United States then issued a public advisory about it. That brings me to a crucial part of this issue. What actually happens to a mother's mind when this pressure meets underlying health changes? In public conversations, people constantly mix up different mental health conditions that happen after childbirth. They lump everything together under vague terms like the baby blues or postpartum stress. But medically, these are vastly different conditions, and confusing them can be dangerous. First, there are the common baby blues. This affects up to 80% of new mothers, involving mild mood swings, worry, tiredness in the first couple of weeks after giving birth, mostly driven by sudden hormone shifts. It usually goes away on its own with basic rest and family support. Second, there's postpartum depression, PPD. This is much more serious, and here, to be precise, you may hear two different numbers online, and they measure different things. CDC data indicates that about 1 in 8 women with a recent live birth report symptoms of postpartum depression specifically. Other data shows a broader figure that 1 in 5 mothers, if you measure both depression or anxiety as entire categories. The statistic that should make us all uncomfortable: in the CDC research, more than half of the women identified with postpartum depression were never treated for it. So postpartum depression is not just feeling a little tired. It causes severe sadness, anxiety, extreme fatigue, feelings of worthlessness, brain fog, and emotional detachment. A mother with postpartum depression might look at her baby and feel completely numb, which also causes deep shame and sometimes leads her to hide her suffering. The National Institute of Mental Health put it very simply: perinatal depression is a medical condition. It can affect a woman regardless of her age, ethnicity, race, income, culture, or education, and is not her fault. And then there's a third condition: postpartum psychosis. This is the condition at the center of the defense argument in the Lindsay Clancy case, and it's something the public deeply misunderstands. Postpartum psychosis is rare, affecting roughly 1 to 2 cases out of every 1,000 births, according to a systematic review of the research. It is not just severe depression. It is sudden and extreme and should be treated as a medical emergency. And I mean literally sudden. The clinical literature describes onset that can sometimes occur within days of childbirth and a symptom picture that can shift dramatically hour to hour. During a psychotic episode, a person completely loses touch with reality. They experience severe hallucinations, intense delusions, irrational paranoia, and extreme confusion. There can be disorganized behavior, severe mood swings, and critically impaired insight, meaning the person often cannot recognize that anything is wrong with their own thinking. The brain is completely hijacked by this acute medical illness. When a person is experiencing postpartum psychosis, they are not making rational, conscious choices, but instead they are trapped inside an altered reality and a total mental breakdown. The American College of OBGYN specifically addresses acute postpartum psychosis in its perinatal mental health guidance and treats it as what it is, a psychiatric emergency, not a wait and see or let's check back at the six-week visit, but an emergency that would be on the same tier as chest pain that would signal a heart attack. And I want to be careful here because I don't want anyone leaving this video afraid of new motherhood. This condition is genuinely rare and it is treatable when it's caught early. So the point is not to frighten anyone, but the point is that we need to stop treating these psychiatric symptoms as evidence of a defective character. Now, how does our society typically respond when a woman shows signs of severe distress? In many cases, people just totally dismiss it. In the novel Yesteryear, the author shows a painfully realistic example of how families ignore these warning signs. When the main character experiences severe postpartum depression after her first child, her support system just completely gaslights her. Her mother sings religious songs and tells her she just needs to pray harder and figure it out. Her mother-in-law gives her pills to quiet her down so she stops complaining. Nobody stops to say that this woman is suffering from a real illness and needs medical care. Unfortunately, I think this also happens in real life every single day. Modern mothers who are struggling are frequently told to just drink some tea, take a nap, practice self-care, or just power through it. Think about how absurd that is in any other medical context. Nobody tells a man with crushing chest pain that may signal a heart attack to just try and take a bubble bath. Nobody suggests get a warm cup of tea if you broke your leg. But a new mother that's experiencing a documented, diagnosable, and treatable mental health crisis often gets told just to be more grateful or go for a walk. I think when society refuses to treat postpartum maternal mental health as a serious medical issue, it forces women to hide their pain until things reach a catastrophic breaking point. So we have seen how the standard and the ideal of motherhood is rigged, and how real suffering is often routinely ignored or brushed aside. That brings us back to the main psychological question. Why does the public love watching mothers fall apart? When a mother fails, whether it's a real-world news story or a fictional character in a book, why do millions of people rush to the social media comment sections to pick apart every single detail? Before I give you the 3 reasons, I want to say something that might sting a little. I don't think the people doing this are monsters. I think they're just exhausted. I think most of the harshest commenters are themselves completely drowning. That's actually what makes this pattern so tragic and so worth understanding. Therapists and cultural analysts point to 3 specific psychological reasons for this behavior. Reason number 1, relief from personal guilt. Every single day, millions of regular mothers wake up feeling like they are falling short. They feel guilty that their house is messy, guilty that their kids watch television, guilty that they ordered takeout food, or even guilty that they lost their temper. So when a prominent figure who represents perfect motherhood suddenly crumbles, it gives everyday viewers a sense of emotional relief. It sends a subtle signal. See, even she could not pull it off. If the perfect mother on screen failed, then I do not have to feel so bad about my own everyday mess. Watching someone else fail releases everyday parents from the impossible pressures of trying to be perfect. But notice what that relief costs. It's just borrowed. It lasts about as long as these social media scroll. And it never once questions the system itself. It just finds someone standing further from it than you are. Reason number 2, moral vindication against impossibly fake standards. I think there's a lot of hidden resentment towards people who preach perfection. When social media creators build huge platforms telling other women how to live, cook, and parent, it creates a lot of tension. So when that influencer's life then explodes, part of the audience feels a sense of dark satisfaction. They feel like the creator is finally being exposed for selling a fake dream. In the book Yesteryear, the readers get a strange satisfaction watching a pampered influencer get forced to handle the actual painful physical labor of living in the 1800s, the lifestyle that she was romanticizing online. I think some of that resentment is truly earned. If you build a business telling other women they're failing, you have chosen to be a public figure making public claims, and those claims deserve scrutiny. The problem is that we rarely stop at the claims, we often go for the person. And then we take that same appetite fully warmed up and we point it at a woman in a wheelchair on trial for the deaths of her children, as if it's the same activity. Reason number 3, blaming individuals instead of fixing broken systems. I think this is the most important reason of all. Fixing real societal problems is complicated, slow, and very hard work. It requires improving healthcare systems, expanding postpartum maternal mental health access, lowering childcare costs, building actual paid parental leave policies, and truly supporting families. It is so much easier for society to focus on personal drama than do the hard work. By obsessing over one mother's mistakes, her marriage, or even her private internet history, people can pretend that the problem is just one bad individual, rather than admitting that the entire environment around families in modern America is absolutely failing. We turn systemic failures into gossip because I think gossip is easy, while doing the hard work to fix a society requires real effort. Well, gossip is free, childcare is not, and I think on some level, we all know which one we've chosen. Before I give you the practical steps, please do one thing. I want you to hear all the rules together the way a mother actually hears them. Earn money, but never let work come first. Stay home, but maintain your independence. Feed them perfectly, but don't be obsessive about the food. Enrich them, but don't overschedule them. Protect them, but don't hover. Be present, but keep your own identity. Document their childhood, but put down your phone. Breastfeed, but not for too long. Ask for help, but remain completely competent. Take care of yourself, but never before them. Every one of those things may be reasonable on its own, but together they create a cage, and every single one of them can be used as evidence against you. So where do I think we go from here? How do we stop participating in this unhealthy cycle? The therapist Katie Chapin gives simple and powerful advice in her Psychology Today article that I think every parent could benefit from, and I would highly urge people to read her article. Her advice is to step away from the noise. Realize that the game of social media perfection is completely rigged, stop playing by those rules, and start making your own rules. So here are 5 clear steps you can take to protect your mental health and reclaim your family life. First, unplug from the algorithm. Step away from the endless stream of curated parenting advice, traditional lifestyle content, and outrageous news headlines. Remind yourself that short-form social media content is often engineered to keep you scrolling by making you feel inadequate or angry. And a practical version of this, because I think delete social media is advice that nobody actually follows. You don't have to quit entirely. Start with a simple audit. Go through the last 20 accounts that you looked at and ask one question about each. Do I feel more capable after looking at this or less? Then just unfollow the ones in the less pile, the ones that make you feel worse and don't add anything useful to your life. You're allowed to curate the thing instead of letting it curate for you. Second, find real-life, honest community of people. Seek out real parents in your local area. Look for the people whose homes have messy living rooms, whose kids throw the occasional tantrums, and who can give you an honest answer when you ask how they're really doing. I think actual human connection destroys the shame that grows when we suffer in silence. The counterintuitive part here is that someone has to go first. Somebody in your circle has to be the one who says, hey, I'm not doing so great this week. And they have to say it out loud. In my experience helping caregivers, that one sentence of actual vulnerability unlocks the entire room sometimes. Everybody's waiting to say it, so be the one who goes first. Third, decide what your family actually values. Take the time to figure out what actually matters to your household. Ignore what online influencers do, ignore what societal trends demand, and ignore what judgment from others dictates. Build your family life around your actual budget, your actual health, and your personal peace of mind. Pick 3 things, write them out on paper, and then everything else can be officially optional, and you could just let it go. Fourth, redistribute the invisible work, not just the visible work. And this one is for the partners watching. Helping out is not the same as truly sharing the load. Doing the dishes when asked is helpful. Owning the fact that the pediatrician appointment exists, remembering it, scheduling it, tracking the follow-up, that's more truly sharing. Fifth, remember that motherhood is something you do, not the entirety of who you are. Motherhood is a vital, wonderful role in life, but it's not the only thing that defines a woman's worth as a human being. Mothers are allowed to have boundaries, personal needs, limits, and their own health requirements. And one last thing, if you're a new or expecting mother watching this, and something in the mental health section sounded uncomfortably familiar, if the exhaustion has an edge to it that doesn't feel normal, or if you're having thoughts that scare you, please treat it the way that you'd treat chest pain and worry about a heart attack. Not as a character flaw, but as a real and potential medical emergency that needs treatment. The National Maternal Mental Health Hotline is 1-833-TLC-MAMA. It's free, it's confidential, and staffed around the clock. So let me leave you here with a reframe. Maybe the wrong question is, why couldn't she be a better mother? Maybe the better questions are, what was she carrying? What support existed? What support is missing? And the hardest one, the one that I've been sitting with while making all this, why are we all so eager to watch? When we start treating mothers as real human beings instead of performers who must be perfect, I think we can stop watching them fail, and we can start building a world where families can actually thrive. And here's a question for you all. I'd love to read the answers. If you could delete one expectation of a good mother from our culture permanently, which one would go first? Or what is the easiest thing we can fix to help reduce the stress on people? Please tell me below. And please share this video with a mother who's worrying right now about how she's handling it. Let's shift the focus to improving our system, not to humiliate individual people who may be trying their best. I'm Neal K. Shah. Thanks for taking the time to think through this with me. Let's take better care of each other, and I'll see you in the next one.